Thanks everyone for being flexible with the start time tonight. Appreciate that so much. We have on our consent agenda our prior minutes from the December 18th meeting, as well as a number of second read policies. Any discussion or questions on those from the board? Okay, so hearing none, I'll make a motion to accept the consent agenda. We'll do that by roll. Sarah?
Aye.
Zach? I think you're muted, Zach.
Sorry about that.
No problem. Akua?
Aye.
Great, and Mary is an aye. Lynn, any need to reprioritize the flow of the meeting tonight?
No, we're all set.
Good with that? Okay, great. So for public comment, there's no one in the virtual realm, eh?
Correct.
Okay. And I know you're here, but I feel like your comment was more relevant for the
Yeah.
NB board.
Yeah,
Okay,
definitely.
perfect, okay. So then we'll move on from that to our spotlight tonight with our tech person, Robert Hickey. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you again. I'm pretty good.
Good,
So, we ready to go?
absolutely.
Cool. So I put together a quick technology integration update that's just going to give us little bits and pieces about some of the technology investments we made over the summer leading into this year. Some equipment that we bought with a Vermont State Lottery grant that we received. How it's targeting some of our curricular goals, and then how I'm planning to continue following up on these technology initiatives to ensure that they are doing what they're intended to do. So let me go ahead and bring it up on my end so I can read what I'm looking at. So if you could go ahead to the next slide, please. So some of the things we're going to be talking about, just some of the connections to POL, to our Portrait of a Learner goals. When we purchased some of this technology, we had clear goals in mind before making these decisions. We're going to be discussing virtual reality opportunities, 3D printers and maker spaces, simulators, our Lou interactive projectors, and then our plans to evaluate these moving forward. Next slide, please. And you can just double tap this one if you want. You just get past that. I made a fancy presentation for it. And so, to kickstart the 24-25 academic year, schools across Franklin Northeast Supervisory Union received hefty technology upgrades and investments to ensure access to immersive and hands-on learning. The following tools and initiatives are now present in most FNESU schools. I should say all. There are a few that have some opportunities or don't, just based on the ages and the content areas that it's geared for. But virtual reality headsets using ESSER funds, the district purchased 70 MetaQuest 3 VR headsets for use with Prisms VR, and I'll expand more on that in just a little bit. This is in addition to the 16 that Montgomery Elementary School had already purchased to participate in this pilot of Prisms VR as well. 3D printers, so through a combination of grant and ESSER funding, there are 19 brand new 3D printers in our schools, bringing the district total to 28 working functional 3D printers. Dedicated maker spaces, all of our schools now have dedicated or semi-dedicated maker spaces, complete with materials, these printers, laser cutters, simulators. So both of our high schools now have custom-built simulators for their driver education programs. These were custom built so that we have the ability to expand into other simulation activities as well, such as heavy equipment operation, flight simulation, and more. And then finally, getting off the ground now, we're doing our first transition of our Lou interactive projectors. Those will be transitioning schools next week, so more schools will get access to those. We'll go on to that. Next slide, please, and thank you. I'm not going to spend much time on this one, but anyone will have access to this after. I'd like to make it publicly available, but this is just the inventory breakdown of all of our new technology investments by school, color-coded by where the funding came from to make it happen. So if we can go to the next slide, please. So now we're going to look at some of the POL indicators that we are targeting with these investments. If you go to the next slide, I just double tap this one. Nobody needs to see that. That's just me talking too much through text. So when we were looking to make heavy investments in technology, back when we knew how much in ESSER funds we had remaining, we wanted to target specific areas in our curricular goals that we knew we needed assistance in and that the technology would actually apply to. These are some of, but not all of the targeted areas through Portrait of a Learner, and we're currently working on integrating technology standards, the ISTE standards, to align with these goals as well. Next slide. Okay, now into the meat and potatoes of this thing. So next slide, please. I'm not going to read all the text on the page, but first is virtual reality. This was our single largest technology investment in terms of equipment and number of students impacted by the purchases. So when we were getting into virtual reality, we did so with a plan. I came across a program called Prisms VR last spring, and after evaluating it, doing multiple student trials, I had 52 student trials across our district. 100% of students said that they would be interested in using it in math and science, so we're giving it a shot. But Prisms VR is a virtual reality learning platform that uses spatial interaction to teach and reinforce what are called bottleneck concepts in math and science from grades 6 through 12. What it does is it places students in real-world scenarios that utilize the math and science that they're learning in the classroom, and then asks them to interact with models and situations and observe whether or not the outcomes were expected. And through doing so, the idea is that students are better able to memorize, internalize, and utilize these skills and concepts that often act as barriers to student learning and progression. Some of the modules that students have now participated in throughout the school year, there's the pandemic module. Students mathematically modeled out the spreading of a pandemic throughout populations, including how that impacts hospital capacity and so forth. They've done modules where they're, assigning flight patterns, using algebra to assign flight patterns, and more. In terms of targeting goals, next slide please. So on this page there was originally like a student testimonial here. For this purpose I've removed it for today, but I had a teacher email me a video they took of a student who was very excited in explaining that this is the best kind of learning for them. By being able to see and physically interact with something, they were better able to understand the math that the teacher had been trying to get through to them for 2 weeks or more. And this is a story that I've gotten from all of our schools that are now piloting this. Next slide, please. To continue to evaluate this, I'm going to be following up. We've been doing a series of surveys periodically throughout the year. Students and teachers have both been taking surveys about how these modules have been going, how they're feeling about math and science class, what they like, what they don't like. And this month I plan to sit down with the teachers to get their perspectives on whether or not it functionally works in class, or if it's too much of a distraction or takes too long to set up. And at the end of the year, I'm going to be taking all of the survey data and comparing it to aggregated academic data to see if there's any relationship between what students are professing about the program and then their academic performance. Next slide. Now onto 3D printers and maker spaces. Next slide, please. So our libraries have made significant progress in adopting and integrating maker spaces into their designs and into classroom instruction. All of our schools have now begun to introduce students to concepts of 3D design and design thinking, utilizing programs like Tinkercad to let students create, personalize, and design their own objects, and then actually print them off, take them home. So that's been pretty cool to see. Students love when the printers are going, and I've been in schools consistently helping get this set up. Next slide, please and thank you. So between the 3D printers, maker carts, revamped learning spaces, these hands-on learning experiences have generated a phenomenal level of excitement and student engagement. Students in Berkshire and Bakersfield have been creating like rubber band powered racers or cars, where they actually get to experiment and see how different sized wheels or different sized rubber bands and different tensions affect the speed of these carts. Some students have even started 3D printing custom parts for their carts or expressing that they'd like to do that to see how that might impact performance later on. Students at Sheldon have been asked to print a variety of different objects, but not necessarily given all the information they need to make it functional, with the idea being that they can look and see what they need to change in the next iteration of that design to make it work. And next slide. And this is just a quick video if you've never seen how a 3D printer works. Through additive manufacturing, layer by layer, they can build whatever objects they design. Next slide, please. My ultimate goal for this is once these programs mature, it's to get these schools thinking about having a unified vision of utilizing 3D printers in maker spaces and STEM towards community goals. So using the Make Able Challenge as a reference, I'm hoping to get schools on board either this year or next to begin thinking about how to 3D print and design objects that help solve community needs, whether that's people with disabilities or people that have challenges where an object that can be designed for them may assist them. So the POO indicators that we are targeting there specifically are for the contributor, contributing to your community and just making this learning visible. Next slide, and you can just double click past this one. Never mind, yep, there we go. So the simulators, so this was kind of like the oddball one of the group. This was the one that was thrown at me kind of towards the end of the summer, but our driving instructors had asked if they could look into getting a simulator that they could share for their driving program. Studies have shown that students that use simulators are more confident behind the wheel and also more responsive to situations as they arise. However, the companies that they gave us to take a look into, their prices versus what they actually offered were not in line with what I knew that we could do if we built custom solutions. So in spending half the money that these companies quoted, we actually built two separate fully featured simulators at Richford and at Enosburg for the driving program, complete with pedals, wheels, ultra-wide screen, force feedback so it feels more realistic. But the big benefit here isn't just for driver's ed, it's for our ability to add additional accessories for a heavy machinery operation if Cold Hollow wants to get in on this, for flight simulation, just to see student interest, allow them to explore things that maybe they didn't have the chance previously. Next slide. And I already covered this, so you can go to the next slide. So the last technology innovation would be our Lou interactive projector. If you're not familiar with this, it's effectively it's a mobile unit, the ones that we have, broadcasts an image on the wall and then uses a combination of a 3D camera scanner to allow you to interact with the images put up on the wall, so they can throw balls at it, they can hit the wall. And it's designed to allow students to be active even during activities that aren't previously ones where you'd be running around for. It can be used for literacy, mathematics, geography, so on and so forth. It also has a ton of cool tracking stuff for cardio. If you could go to the next slide, please. So we just got these units up and running at the beginning of December, though we spent a little time in Berkshire through the middle to end of November to kind of really hone in how we're going to use these. Students at Berkshire have absolutely loved it. They're kind of sad that it's transferring from their school next week. But then Patrick, the physical education teacher there, it's been kind of a game changer for them because even students that weren't previously active in gym class have been participating. So this is giving them opportunities that maybe they wouldn't have been active before, and this is going to be rotated through all of our schools going forward. And finally, my last bit, one more. So with all of these, my work is far from done. Over the next few weeks, it's my intention to follow up on these initiatives, to see kind of where we're at currently, to follow up with both students and teachers, to get perspectives from both sides. But also to get input, not just from people working in the school, but from the community as well. Whether I'm sending out surveys, getting feedback from parents at home, or administrators, or people that, don't traditionally interact with students on a daily basis. Just because we know that our communities have a vested interest in seeing our students succeed, and all feedback is good, all data is good data. Each of these opportunities that I've presented today have direct measurable ties to our curricular goals, so they're not things we just pulled out of a hat. And they have the potential to provide greater community exposure to the investments that we're making in our classrooms. So I'm going to be following up with a series of surveys through studies, and then an end of the year report to see what was effective, what wasn't, and what needs to change. So that's everything I have for you today. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Robert. I want to just highlight a couple of things. So most of you know that Robert worked on the NMV side last year. He was our technology integrationist just for the 4 NMV schools, and this year he's now the technology integrationist for all schools in FNESU. And I just wanted to note what a remarkable job he has done, really thinking deeply about curriculum and really thinking deeply about the types of skills that we're trying to build in our students. He is we all know that we're serving a community that usually has very diminished resources, and we're used to functioning, doing as much as we can with little. Robert is a hustler. He got a grant for the 4 NMV schools. He was turned down 29 times, and he kept at it until he was able to finally get that grant, and that really kicked off all of the makerspace, the 3D printing stuff that is happening in those NMV schools. So I definitely applaud Robert. Another place where we got feedback from teachers about the direction that we were going to go in, because we had saved a big chunk of that ESSER, the COVID recovery money, to focus on engagement and building skills with students that they need to be able to enter effectively into the future workforce. And Robert was a really integral part of that. We had some demos that came in, and we brought them to teachers and got feedback. He went out and got feedback from the students. He just did an outstanding job of leading us in the right direction. And the thing, he went quickly by those driver ed simulators. That was a request from our 2 driver ed teachers, and it was cost prohibitive when we looked at how much the simulator would cost. And he came to me and said, I think I can build it. And I think I could build it for, maybe it was a quarter or a third of the price of what the manufacturer simulator was going to be. So he was able to do that, to get 2 simulators out there for far less than one would have cost us. And it's going so well. In fact, one of our driver ed teachers sits at us on a state level committee, and the idea of the simulator is gaining traction with other driver ed programs across the state. So Robert is innovating, and he's creating opportunities for our students to also innovate. He's integrating those portrait of learner skills into all that he's doing, and we know from our work that those are the skills that are going to best prepare our students for their future demands. So thank you for your work, Robert. I appreciate the presentation.
Thank you.
Same, that's amazing. Thank you so much, Robert. Okay, so that moves us on to our financial and business report, Morgan.
I don't have anything for you tonight other than the 3 audits are all clean. We're working with the auditors now just to make some minor corrections, mostly around language here and there. And I will share with you your district audits and the SU audit for this board once I have a final version, and I'll include again that little crosswalk I give you about what parts of the 100 pages you really want to tune into.
Sounds good. Okay. And I did just want to acknowledge we had a new visitor. Are you here for public comment?
Not today.
Not today. Okay, no problem. we're welcome. So that brings us then to you, Lynn.
You're muted.
Okay. I apologize for not being able to be there. Been fighting a nasty illness, hoping I'm on the other end of it at this point. So here is my board report. I will start with personnel. Hoping I'm going to be able to read it from my screen. I can. So even though that is bolded, it is not anything that the board needs to take action on because it was a change in contract mid-year. So Jenna Bradley shifting to being a behavior technician. So that is all informational. I will say, just in terms of open positions, we are still looking for a speech and language pathologist, a after-school program assistant site coordinator at Enosburg Elementary. In our alternative program, we're looking for behavior technicians, a behavior specialist, special educators, and substitutes. Substitutes for teachers, nurses, paraeducators, custodians, and food service. So if anybody's listening and wants to come work in FNESU, please reach out to us. Morgan and I have spent a fair amount of time building boards understanding this fall about the complexity of what's about to hit us in terms of education funding. We know there are going to be some changes at the federal level with the new administration. And so some of our grant funding that we usually rely upon to fund staff, particularly interventionists in our schools, some of those funds are at risk moving forward. And we also know that there's volatility in Vermont with the education funding system. We've been talking to a little bit about some of the changes that the legislature is probably going to contemplate. So given both the uncertainty of the state level funding and the federal level funding, I feel that it's more important this year than ever to send the union a notice that we may have to contemplate a reduction in force. It doesn't mean we're going to reduce staff, but it means that you still have that opportunity to do so. We're just notifying them that it's a possibility. You may have to reduce the workforce. So it asks for a motion from the board to direct me to notify the union that we may contemplate a reduction in force.
Any discussion from the board on that motion? And just for context, I know the NMB board has already passed that reduction in force, and I assume ER did as well.
They did.
Any discussion from the board on that? Okay, then I'll make the motion for the contemplation of reduction in force. We'll do that by roll. Sarah?
Aye.
Zach?
Aye.
Akua?
Aye.
And Mary is an aye.
I'm going to turn this slide over to Morgan today.
And I'll do a quick walkthrough because you've heard it recently in both of your local meetings. But as Lynn just tipped in the earlier conversation, there are a lot of changes coming down the pike. The Commission on the Future of Public Education has about 11 more months of existence in which they're tasked to present the legislature with a roadmap and propose legislation for how to fundamentally change the way that we fund and deliver education. I don't think many people who are watching closely are thinking that the legislature is going to wait that long to act. Certainly the governor has been out early in the letter that we shared earlier that went out to the legislature, and then again in his inaugural address. Basically he had presented to the legislators a sort of syllabus where he's sending AOE staff to joint House and Senate committees, both education and Ways and Means, setting the stage for what he is going to present in his budget address. In his inaugural speech, he tipped that it could include a statewide teacher contract, it could include combining schools, combining districts, superintendencies, changing the funding formula to the one that we barely understand now, but have been operating under for a couple hundred years, to something that is more familiar to people in other states, where rather than setting a budget, you are told how much money you get to spend, and you work a budget within that limit. And then also something that's not been really fleshed out yet, as far as I know, he has implied that he wants to take away any concern, any time that the legislature needs to spend on this year's budget discussion. So last year, most of the session was around fixing what was going on in FY25. What he seems to be tipping is that if school districts come in with budgets under a certain level, he will make sure that there's no negative property tax impact, so that the legislature doesn't have to spend time on fixing anything this year, and they can just focus on what he's proposed for next year. There are links to a number of documents that are sort of backing that up here. Certainly the Vermont Education Funding System Explained is a good one. And then I think the letter to legislators is a good one to pay attention to as well. Negotiations update, you also got this year 2 local meetings. We've had 1 meeting so far with the 2 union negotiation teams. It feels like we're closer to settlement with the support staff than we are with the teaching staff. We did have a second meeting scheduled, and it was canceled due to weather. So we do have a meeting on the books for mid-February, and we're working right now to come up with a kind of a replacement date for the one that we canceled. Lynn, I see you're back on. Is there anything you want to add to that?
It looks like I don't know if you saw it in the email that I forwarded to you, but it looks like we won't be able to get back at negotiations until February 17th. We can go to the next slide. So both local boards were given, I brought requests from Northwest Access TV for funding. So all of you know the value, I know you know the value because we talked about it at your local boards. Having Northwest Access come in and record our meetings, edit our meetings, post our meetings, host them online, and give public access to these meetings, which I think is an incredible value. We took a look at Mary's request on the number of people who are watching our meetings, and we regularly have quite a number of viewers. It's regularly in triple digits. We had a couple of meetings, I think there was an 8,000 viewer meeting, and I thought that must be a mistake, and then I remembered what happened in the Enosburg auditorium the year that we had to go into the school year with masking and vaccinations and things like that. And so we definitely got around, our video got around that fall. So Morgan, if you could click that link. So the request, if you could go down just a little bit further. Is there an amount on this letter? Yes. It's going to be $340. The request.
Yeah, $340.
There's a little bit more than each of the district boards who are asked to contribute. And I suspect that has to do with them coming out to our annual meetings as well and doing some videotaping for us. But they're definitely seeing a decrease in their public funding, supporting public access TV. So we're asking the board to consider upping their contribution to $2,340 in here.
And I'll add that I think another factor in the price being higher is that they have tried, at least in the past, to tie that to the overall population of the community that they're seeing. So the NMV board is serving 6 communities. The 2 local boards have smaller reach.
And I know that NMV passed the full amount of their ask, and how did that land for Enosburg, Richburg?
Same.
So I'm a huge proponent of public access TV. I think it's a really important tool in the community, especially for people who can't always afford cable and the like. And it's really important also because it allows people who can't be here in person to see our meetings and watch them. They get quite a lot of viewership. So I would like to fund it in full, but I'm open, of course, to hear what the rest of the board would like to do around that.
I agree with the amount that they're asking.
Great. Thanks, Sarah. Any other discussion from the board, or do other people feel differently? And do I feel comfortable spending that full amount?
I'm in agreement as well, Mary.
Okay, thanks, Akua. And Morgan, I assume we have it comfortably in our budget. It's literally a grain of sand
And I don't think we
compared
need
to
a
the
motion.
entirety of the budget.
Correct.
Okay, it's the right thing to do, I think. So I'll make that motion
I don't think
to,
we need a motion.
we don't?
As long as we have
Oh, we
direction.
debated last time around whether we did or didn't need a motion.
Just to remind you, Morgan won that debate.
Who won? I can't remember, even though it was just about a week ago.
Yeah, Morgan won.
Morgan won, okay, no motion, but yay, public access. All right, good stuff.
So I want to talk about central office administrator negotiations, but that's something I'd like to do in executive session, so if we can hold that until the end.
Certainly, Lynn, no problem, I'll circle back to that at the end.
You're muted.
Sorry, I'm a little earlier this year than normal, bringing the first FNESU 25-26 calendar forward. So I think this is final. I presented it to principals today. I did not see any pushback on this, so I'm gonna just walk you through some changes to this calendar. But before Morgan clicks into that, I just want to be transparent that this calendar reflects a statewide effort by superintendents and career and tech center directors to align calendar elements to reduce some of the barriers for kids who attend tech centers that are not necessarily in their district or supervisory union. So the calendar also by statute has to align across our region. We're the Champlain Valley region, so I work with superintendents from 2/3 of Addison County, all of Chittenden County, Grand Isle, and Franklin to put this calendar together, and then we work to get even greater alignment with Franklin and Grand Isle superintendents, because we have such an impact on one another. If one of us is in school and another school is having in-service, it really impacts whether or not the other school is able to staff their buildings. So these are pretty aligned calendars. So if you could open that, Morgan. What we were able to accomplish, I believe it's statewide now. I'll know for sure the first week of February when I have my next Vermont Superintendents Association trustees meeting. What we tried to accomplish is a common starting date, which is starting on the Wednesday of the last week in August. We did a little pilot last year that was not something that was hugely popular when we shifted to starting on the Monday. So we're going back to the Wednesday, and we agreed upon, I believe we've agreed upon a common February and a common April break, which is a huge help to some of those CTE centers. So kids and students are on the same calendar. So we have most of our in-services happen in that week before school starts, with some in-service time on the Monday before the first day. We have teacher orientation the 13th and 14th of August. There's a little change in October 2025. So on October 2nd, we agreed as a region that we would not be in school. These calendars have traditionally been set up around Christian holidays. And it is left very little space for other religious observances, and what we agreed upon was that we would all honor Yom Kippur on October 2nd, so there will be no school on that day. On October 23rd, we will have in-service, and on the 24th, that will be a day off. We always try to do a long weekend there because it's a very long time from September from the start of the school year in August until that Thanksgiving break. So try to give them one long weekend in there. In November, we agreed that the Thanksgiving week, we would not have students. We do have an in-service day scheduled in that week, and teachers will actually have parent-teacher or family conferences that will happen sometime in that month, the equivalent of 8 hours. So they'll get credit for the in-service day on the 24th, plus a credit for an additional day from the evening time that they worked. The December break next year falls in a really funny place. So no one likes a one-day week. They're not very effective. So we have decided that we'll be in school the 22nd and 23rd. I know some people are not going to love that idea, but we don't want to not go on the 23rd and have a one-day week on the 22nd. We also don't want to end on the 19th, which would give people 2 full weeks off. So our compromise was in school through the 23rd, and then when we return in January, we will have the 1st and the 2nd off, because again, we didn't want a one-day week only coming in on the 2nd. So we will have no school on Martin Luther King Day, and we will have an in-service on the 20th. Our February break hasn't changed. We will have in-service on March 20th. In April, teachers will receive credit for family conferences, the equivalent of 8 hours, so they'll get an extra day's credit for that month. May, no changes, and what we're anticipating, the 176th day of school next year would be June 15th. Any questions about that calendar?
Lynn, do you
I have
need?
some questions, Lee, Lynn. Are the other schools that you referenced also doing in-service on Tuesdays as well?
In service on Tuesdays? You need early release.
Half a day, early release, yeah.
So we don't have a half a day anymore, we have an hour early release. So I don't know what number that do, but what?
No, what? That's what I was asking.
So a number of them do have that, some of them come late on a day, some of them have an early release like we do. I don't have the exact number that do it, and the exact number that don't.
Okay, so that's not necessarily something that's aligned. Okay, and then the other question, it's interesting, you mentioned that the Monday start date wasn't popular. I'm interested to hear, like, what kind of feedback did you get around that versus the Wednesday?
So the Wednesday is what historically was in place for the first day of school. There are people that really didn't like it across the region because they have traditions of having freshmen come a day early, but they have other things that happen usually the day before school starts. And by pushing that to Monday, it pushed those things into the week before, which butted up against what people were trying to do in service. I will tell you from our perspective, it was challenging when we were trying to find training dates for some of our paraeducators that have to do with care recertification. We had the whole week before that was packed, the full 5 days with in-service, and there was no flexibility, so we didn't have any extra days that we could play around with and offer those trainings kind of in between in-services. The feedback we got from teachers also was that what I try to do, if you think about what you saw in that calendar, is they have 4 days of in-service on the week before school starts, but there's nothing on Friday. And that's something that I've heard over the years is appreciated because many of them want to be in their classrooms on Friday. or they want the extra break before they kick it into high gear the following week. We have stuff on Monday, and that gives us flexibility because principals are also trying to put in, back to school nights and things like that, and it was very difficult to do those things last year when everything was crammed into that 1 week.
Gotcha, thanks. And so then just a final question, that's to the Tuesday, early release, not in service. Has the feedback on that been pretty favorable as well?
I think in most, what?
Sorry, guys, it sounds like we have a little bit of a gap or a lag here. I've been with teachers and families, yeah, so that was the end of my question.
So the first year, I heard some negative things from families. I haven't heard anything since about, I think we've gotten into a routine. Our after-school program offering supports for that hour, I think really helped when we proactively put that into place. I think in most schools, we're getting positive feedback from teachers. Certainly my curriculum team is, the people from my curriculum team are in the room there tonight. They can help with some of this, but what this has done is it has allowed teacher teams to find time within the workday to be able to meet and to plan forward. It has allowed principals to have extended professional learning time. Well, I know one of the things that someone said to me the first year that we shifted to this is, shouldn't teachers know how to teach when we hire them? And I'm not saying that teachers don't know how to teach. Some of them do, some of them don't. We're hiring people that have never been teachers before to fill some of our positions. But there's so much that they're navigating in the time that they can spend together, really looking at student data and planning for how they're going to make instructional moves with students is really important. For those teachers to be able to engage in that lengthier professional learning also better prepares them to be effective with students. So I think most people would say that time is valuable. I know that there have been times where when they were given less structure by some leaders, I think we've corrected that. That's when we got some feedback that it was not as effective, but I have not heard anything of the sort this year. I don't know if Gab or Michelle or anyone wants to add anything in the room.
I mean, I don't have any specific data on it right now, but I think it's like the only other time that we have to get people together to do work and address some of the initiatives and collaborate. So from my perspective, it's super useful. We've had a lot of conversations recently about how the SU in-service days are really spread out. And it's really hard to do work in that way. It's not really how people learn. So if you have a meeting in October and then you don't see each other again until January, it takes a long time just to you get with your group and then you have to figure out where you left off and what you're supposed to do. It's not very efficient. It's just not how people learn. It's not how humans learn. So having that weekly time that's extended, I think is useful for learning. But we haven't done any specific surveys, Akua, this year about that.
Gotcha, thank you. Yeah, no, it would be interesting to continue to track that, especially as we have, some distance between when we shifted to that. I know in the first year versus, later years, people's impression and feedback will be different and change. So I was just interested to see what we've been hearing. So thank you.
Yeah, I think anecdotally, what I have heard is similar to what Lynn shares. The first year, where there were some leaders that weren't as structured with the time, teachers didn't find it useful. But this year, I think universally, that time has been a little more effective and people are finding it pretty useful. So again, the more structured it is and the more well-planned, the more effective it is.
Got it, thanks. That's all the questions I have.
Can we go back to a slide, Morgan? I I would love for the board to adopt this calendar.
Lynn, I just had one question. Will this calendar, this is only applicable for the 25-26 year? And I mean, obviously, every year, the weeks align a bit differently. So, but thematically, some of those broader themes you talked about, like the having Yom Kippur off, which I really applaud. You know, as a Jewish family, it's one of the holiest days of the year, and it's nice to have that off. It's always counted as an unexcused absentee for my kids. So I appreciate that personally. But so in general, some of those things will persist regardless of the calendar year. It'll just have to morph a little when you have these weeks where you don't want to just have a single day of school in a given week.
Yeah, it's a constant, it's a work in progress constantly.
Yeah.
There are things that are in the Chittenden County school calendars that are different than our calendars, just depending on the population of students that they serve. So there are other high holy days for students who, I'm trying to think of some, Eid is one, where that's embedded. I think that one is in October, into some of those calendars. We do not have a population of students that we are aware of here that would require us to navigate that kind of a shift. We're always reassessing and looking at those pieces.
Sure.
So our intention is to move forward with this. I don't see us wanting to shift back away from that shift that we made this year. And the alignment piece is a big deal because we have historically had kind of a line across the state where some people have, you know, this week in April off, and then the rest of the schools in Vermont have this week in April off. There are some schools that are outliers in February because they had old language in a collective bargaining agreement that required that they had President's Day off. So they always had their February break the week before we did, so that they didn't have to have a day off, a few days of school, and then a week off. So if we're able to get to that, then that's a big deal across the state to have aligned those things in a statewide calendar move.
Great, okay, thanks. I appreciate the clarification around that. Any other discussion from the board on calendar-related topics? Okay, so I will then make a motion to accept the FNESU 25-26 calendar. We'll do that by roll. Sarah?
Aye.
Akua?
Aye.
Zach?
Aye.
And Mary is an aye.
That's all I have for you,
Okay.
except the executive session.
Yeah, we'll do that at the end so we can let all our directors go. Okay, great. So we'll move on to our central office department updates. Dominic?
First, just kind of an FYI, we upgraded our version of Google Workspace. We had planned to do that for this, mostly for the security tools, some things to help us combat spam, phishing, and malware. So, unfortunately, those things aren't going away anytime soon. And then as part of that, we realized that by coupling that with the upgrade, some other upgrades that would give us the full version of Google Meet, that it became more cost effective for us to switch to Meet rather than switching to Zoom. But we're still getting used to that transition. And I also wanted to talk a little about the Power School breach that happened recently.
Right.
It happened after we had these notes, and so it wasn't on my list, but I just wanted to give kind of a recap of what's happened and how we've responded to it so far. Just read some notes. So on January 7th, we were notified by Power School that they had a cybersecurity incident and our data was accessed by an unauthorized party. Since then, Power School has shared more details via webinar. I've attended 2 webinars so far. So they said a Power School subcontractor's account was compromised. Their credentials were web, and that was used to access PowerSource. PowerSource is a customer support portal, and it allows their personnel the ability to access all of our schools' PowerSchool SAS systems so that they can help us when we need it. So the threat actor then used that access to export student and employee data from SAS systems nationwide. So PowerSchool has then since stated that the incident has been contained and no other PowerSchool products were affected. That's pretty important for a lot of us. Like us, we use PowerSchool's e-finance for our business department, so all our payroll, and where there's a lot more sensitive data. And they also made the following statement: said, "We do not anticipate the data being shared or made public, and we believe it has been deleted without any further replication or dissemination." And that's most of the detail that they've shared so far. They've hired a company called CrowdStrike, which is one of the biggest cybersecurity companies in existence, to do a full report. They said they're going through and analyzing about 15 terabytes of data to give a full picture of exactly what happened, exactly what data was taken from every customer, and sharing that with all of us once they have it finished. So what we've done since then, I searched our server logs and confirmed that we were indeed affected by this. And so the following day, on January 8th, we notified all of our current families and employees of the incident. And we also have filed a claim with FISBIT. And so at this point, I've attended several meetings and webinars, both with PowerSchool, with the state. Today was one with a cybersecurity company called K-12-6. Just getting recommendations and trying to make sure that we all know exactly what we need to do, what PowerSchool needs to do, make sure we can handle everything as well as we can. And I did want to also add a note that while PowerSchool SAS does have a field for storing social security numbers, and a lot of schools do use that, we do not. So we did not have any social security numbers in our system. That's at least something that we have data that sensitive in there. So it was mostly demographics type data, exported from the student and teacher files or tables. So it's like names, addresses, phone numbers, that kind of stuff.
And what do you reckon is the intention I mean, I understand with social security numbers, it really ups the ante as far as the harm that can be caused, but in this case, like, what might be the value of them stealing all of that demographic information?
It was basically extortion. So they kind of the business model, if you want to call it that, of this type of threat actor is to steal all of this data and then go to the company and say, if you pay us X amount of dollars, we'll destroy this data instead of releasing it on the dark web for others.
So it's leverage over the company and the resources of the company, not over the individuals who had their information
Correct.
accessed.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's why they're not doing what sometimes folks do, is then they give you like a year of like credit monitoring when these breaches happen, because your social security number was part of the breach.
They still may offer something like that.
Okay.
Actually, I wouldn't be surprised at all if they do.
Okay.
Because even if you have some assurances that the data's all been deleted, if somebody that would steal your data, it's
Right.
Trustworthy.
yeah. So I mean,
Yes.
the way PowerSchool reps have phrased it is that that is their business model. So they know that if you pay them and they don't delete the data, then the next time they do it, there's no reason for the next business to pay them. So that's why they're pretty confident, and they said they were given a video of the threat actor showing them that they deleted it. But we can't know 100% that it's
Right.
taken care of. So I do expect a lot more information to be coming, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if like some type of credit monitor or
Okay.
something along those lines would be offered.
And the financial burden of that would be borne by our school.
Yeah, even though, we take responsibility for the data, it was all in their systems.
Right.
There was nothing we could have done differently to
Right.
prevent it. It was all through their support system. Even the school districts who run their own servers, whether, we're hosted by Power School, but even the school districts that run their own physical servers in their own buildings were affected as well. That power source allows them access to every system that's out there.
So we will get another communication out to our community once we know more about where it's going to go from here. I just want to go back to the part where Dominic said that we did not have any social security numbers in our student information system. And I know he won't take credit for it, but I'm going to give it to him anyway. Dominic had the foresight to make sure that no registrars were putting any of that information online. So even in some cases we have student social security numbers, we don't store those anywhere. So I thank Dominic for his due diligence in making sure we were set up well for this situation.
Great, thanks, appreciate it. Anything else, Donna?
No.
Okay, great. Gab?
I think I'll just add on to some of Robert's presentation around technology. One of the things that Lynn and I have talked about, and Robert and Dominic and other Robert and Enosburg have sort of grappled with is in the portrait of a learner indicators, there's not a leaf for technology, there's not a leaf for digital citizenship, and we really want to make it visible. It's clearly we're integrating technology, but how do we make that visible in the indicators without making it a separate thing? So we've been working really hard because technology is something that you integrate into subject areas and into content and activities. It's not something that will stand very well on its own in a leaf. You don't want kids just doing technology in isolation, right? It's integrated with different things. And so we're trying to figure out how to make that visible in the portrait of a learner indicators without taking away the benefit that integrating it into community engagement or some of the other content areas does for engagement. It's not very engaging all on its own. It has to be, it's better integrated. So how do we make that visible in the portrait of learner indicators? So we're working on that piece.
Great, thanks, Gab, appreciate it. Michelle?
Sure. The only thing I have to add is that we offered professional development for special educators, where we talked about why we rely on data, standards, and strategies to create the most reliable IEPs. We looked at gathering and analyzing student data and practice how to design data-driven present-level statements. Just finished that up yesterday.
Can I add one piece to yours, Michelle?
Sure.
Just a celebration that Michelle and the Assistant Special Ed Director, Stacy Cattell-Godin, were interviewed by, help me remember the name.
Goalbook.
By Goalbook, which is the tool we use to create IEPs in FNESU. And Michelle's been really strategically partnering with Goalbook, and they just released an article about how we're really effectively using it, and they interviewed both Stacy and Michelle. That was just published, I believe, last week. So it was very exciting to see FNESU in a national news piece.
Excellent, that's awesome, thank you. Michelle Irish.
Yeah, so I don't have anything to add. I just wanted to sort of highlight that my report this month really is focusing on the educational quality standards, the revisions that were passed by the state board this past year that take effect on July 1st. And I know I talked about them during my spotlight last month. They are a pretty comprehensive shift in the way schools are being asked to do business around their education quality. So I just try to bring them into, it's a 27 or 37 page document, so trying to help give you some kind of highlights. This will be the last time we probably have a report until we meet again in April, so I wanted to give you a little bit now and we'll continue that work, but this will be something that we'll all be sort of diving into much more deeply as they go live in July. So we are in the prep stages of that. But I think the essence of my report is we're in pretty good space. We've reviewed them here and found lots of places we are already engaged in the work, and a lot of schools are looking at this document going, oh. They're not as well placed. We've been doing lots of work over the last several years to be in good standing with these rules, so.
Excellent.
Yeah.
That's great. Thank you so much. Dawn.
So, once again, it's just pretty much getting my stuff ready for the state reviews that are coming up. We're going to be, 2 reviewers will be on site on March 19th. They'll actually be to 2 of our schools, just kind of watching over the meal services that we do there at that time. And then it's also a week-long process. I have to download all the information to them that they need in February, because it's also an extensive look into the program virtually. They'll go through and look at stuff, a lot of information. Basically, what they're trying to do is just make sure that we are following what the standards are, the regulations and everything, and that we are doing what the USDA is asking us to do, that our meals are in compliance, and we're not claiming meals that really are not in compliance, that we're following within the regs. It's a long process, it's a lot of work, but when it's done, we can say to ourselves, at least we were doing the right thing. So that's a big thing. The month of December, we ended up taking and we served out quite a few meals and snacks. Our snack counts, we only had snacks for 2 weeks in that month. And all of our buildings are running after school program snacks and breakfast and lunch in all of our buildings.
Great. Thank you so much.
So I don't have anything to add to my report, but we did hire 4 support staff members since the December meeting, but we also had 5 support staff that left. And we had 3 teachers that resigned and 1 teacher that switched roles, which is what Lynn was talking about in her report. So we filled 1 since I wrote this, but we still have 2 others that we didn't get those resignations. And then we wrapped up the open enrollment period that took effect January 1st. They had a month to get all any changes back to me before the Christmas break. They can change, gold to silver, silver to gold. They can add, delete any members. We did have an increase of 9 employees that came on to our insurance. All the other changes were more just plans or members. So that was enrollment. And then the next thing actually did come out, teacher license renewals come out this month. So everybody that has to renew that will be expiring June 30th. So the next project to get letters out to those folks.
That's an amazing amount that you juggle. Thanks, Jamie. Melissa.
Hi, I apologize for not being there tonight. I'm home with my little guy who's under the weather.
No worries.
My report, I had talked a bit about Act 76 and just wanted to note that there's a typo, that it's not the 25-26 school year, it was actually the 26-27 school year. But I wanted to bring it up this month only because it was popular back in June of 2023, like that fall, I suppose. There was some media coverage around UPK, so Universal Pre-Kindergarten, and the direction it was going. And then from this law, an implementation committee had been pulled together and a report just went out. And that's what I had shared in my board notes. I don't expect that there will be much news anytime soon, but just wanted to kind of give a rough update in case the media does pick it up so everybody knows where we're at. And, you know, we've made a few subtle shifts over the years, but as far as we're looking now, we're going to just hold steady. We're in a really good spot and feeling pretty good.
Great, thank you so much, Melissa. I hope your little one feels better.
Thank you.
Fern?
Yeah, I'm working on RFPs for summer projects. We've got a couple of schools that are in need of boilers, so I sent a bunch of those out today. The next one will be Berkshire, and over the next couple weeks, like we haven't got enough going on with the state, now we're testing now for radon in our schools, so that'll be coming up within the next month or so. So yeah, just trying to get rolling for the summer projects.
Radon remediation does tend to be a little less costly than pieces.
Boy, we're hoping. We're hoping.
Sometimes that's just ventilating and moving the radon.
Yes.
Okay, well, fingers crossed that we don't have it.
Yes.
But that any remediation would be low-hanging fruit.
That's right.
All right, thanks so much. Fern, I'm sorry, was there anything else?
No, that's fine.
Okay, appreciate it. Thank you so much. All right, thank you, everyone. So let's see. Lynn, I know we need to circle back to executive session. We have superintendent negotiations also to discuss. So we'll do that in executive session as well, a separate executive session as well, okay?
Yes.
Okay, so then our next regularly scheduled meeting is Wednesday, April 16th here at the central office, but I have a strong suspicion that we will likely need a special meeting at some point between now. My money's on a special meeting or two between now and April, so stay tuned for that. We'll see how budget season goes. Anything else from the rest of the board to discuss tonight? At the moment in public meeting, that is? Okay, so I'm gonna make a motion to enter executive session, and then we'll let everyone but the board and Lynn, and I assume Morgan, eh? Okay, go. So make a motion to enter executive by roll. Sarah?
Aye.
Zach?
Aye.
Akua?
Aye.
And Mary is an aye. Great, thank you all so much. Drive safely, it's slippery out there. Of both executive sessions with no motions pending. Any other discussion from the board tonight? Okay, so I'll make a motion then to adjourn. We'll do that by roll. Sarah?
Aye.
Akua?
Aye.
Zach?
Aye, sorry.
And Mary is an aye. Great, thank you all so much. I'll be in touch.